Okay, there we have it, balls on. Now they go on the outside of all the servo horns, including the other side. Don't forget the nuts and the Loctite on those nuts. Try not to get any of the Loctite on the servo arms because blue Loctite can soften plastic. Okay, so I'm going to start with the elevator servos first. So again, it's important you get this 90 now. Alright, so what you want to do is you want to go to this bag here. You want to get out the 68 millimeter rods, which are these shortest ones here. There's two of them. And go ahead and get some links out. And then go ahead and make those up so that the 68, 58, so that the links read 56 from the inside to the inside of the links. So let's go ahead and get two of these made up per the manual, and we'll come back and then we'll check for this arm being 90 and getting our link lengths right, okay? So go ahead and get those made up and we'll come back and continue. Okay, so we went ahead and made up the link to 56 millimeter, and that's measuring from the inside to the inside per the manual. Also note, get the links in the same orientation. That ring on the link is what goes onto the ball first, okay? The side without the ring should be facing up. Get them in the same orientation, make sure they're parallel. So let's just see how close 56 millimeter is. Now remember, servos are different. There's a little bit of play in mounting them. So this is just an approximation in the manual because your mileage will vary. But what I like to do is set up one link first and then radio's on. As you can see, everything's center. We're doing the elevator here. So I'm just going to place it on top of the ball and kind of hold it in place. So let's see how we're looking here. Now remember, our servo's 90 now. This is important that you have your servo 90 at this point. That's the starting point. If it's not 90, then you're going to wind up adjusting these links to get this arm at 90, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And you're going to wind up with the links not being close to the same length or something along that line, or slightly off. So it's important to get that 90 and then go from there. So let's see what we got. Holding this link on there, if you'll notice, there's a notch in the frame right here, okay? And with that notch, what you want is this arm, this elevator arm, to be dead center of the notch. It can help you maybe if you put a tool in that notch and kind of eyeball. So let me see if I can hold that up and look. So you can see with the tool in there, in relation to the arm, I'm pretty close to 90, as you see. Okay, it's kind of hard for me to show in the video here, but we want that arm, again, this arm right here, to be in line with that notch, and I mean dead center of it. So this arm here, this elevator arm in the inside, trying to show it in line with that notch. So let me just double check mine real quick. And actually looking at it, I'm a little bit low, as you can see. So what does that mean? Well, 56 millimeter didn't quite work out for me. So I'm going to open this up a turn, and these are relatively tight. Okay, and I'm going to put this on, and we'll double check it again, see how close I am to 90. Pardon me as I get my head in the way. And I'm going to go one more turn out. Okay. It's looking like it's getting pretty close now. So 2 turns from my 56, and yeah, now I'm dead set. That arm is dead set in line with that notch in the frame, okay? Straight across, dead set. So that's what you want. Now some might say, well, Bob, shouldn't you make up both links the same length? Let me get this link on and I'll come back and tell you why. And part of it has to do with, there's an assumption that these output shafts are directly in line with each other and that the output shaft isn't slightly low or high. If it's slightly low or high, of course, that's going to change your relationship. Now, you'll see some helicopters where if it's really low, the servo arm is not 90 to the body, it's 90 to the arm. So you make this nice square box, and that's what we want here. A nice square box coming from here to here to here so that that arm is 90 with that notch. Now, one of the things some people think is that these links have to be exactly the same length. Well, they may not be, depending on some servo's output shaft may not be in the same place, and it may be a little higher or lower, and in which case you might have a couple of turn difference between the links. But I'll show you how we want to set the second link to make sure that we're not causing any stress on our servo. So let me get this one on and we'll come back. Okay, I measured it, and pretty much I'm the same. So it means my output shafts are pretty directly in line to make this a nice square 90 box. But anyway, let me show you what I'm doing. What I've got is, we've got this one link on, again. Make sure that this arm is 90 in that notch, lines right up with that notch. Okay, again, sticking a tool in there might help you make sure that in the notch across the frames might help you make sure that arm's 90. That's the super important part. Now the next part we want to do is get this link adjusted, and I wouldn't worry if it's a turn different one way or the other, but the idea being is put this on one ball and it should drop right on the other ball of the bell crank. What you don't want to do is have it too short or too long to where you're pulling or pushing on the output shaft bearing of the servo or the bearing here on the bell crank. You want that to be a nice drop-on fit. So again, you're not trying to push or pull here, okay? So I go ahead and get that on there. All right, and there we have it. Now what you want to also do is check deflection. Make sure you don't hear any servo buzzing. Now I may have too much swash mix at this point. I'm going to go full pitch. I'm sure I do, yeah. So I've got too much. We'll work on that later when we do head setup. But what you don't want to hear is when it's your extremes, that the servo's straining or you're hearing it screaming or anything. Okay, and that makes sure you got a nice parallel setup. Okay, so that does the elevator links. Now we're going to go ahead and do this set of links, and it's going to be almost the same as the set on the other side, so I'm not going to show all three. But we're going to go ahead and get out of the bag the longest links here in the bag, and we're going to do this very same thing we did with the elevator servo with this servo. So go ahead and make those up, and we'll take one more look at doing that process again, and then of course do the other side of the heli. Okay, so next up again, we're doing this front servo. Again, servo arm 90. That's super important to start with, and then we want to 90 this arm. So I went ahead and made this link up per the manual, and I think I changed it one turn, but here's how you test for this arm being 90. In the frame is a set of holes right here, okay, and you can run a tool straight through there. Okay, so with the radio on, oops, let me turn on. The radio on, what you want to do is make up that one link so that when you run this tool through there, you can clearly see that tool? You can clearly see that the tool is dead center of the ball there. All right, let me double check mine. Yep, dead center of the ball. All right, so you can see that the end of that tool is dead center with the ball, and that means that this arm is now 90 up to the swash. We have our servo arm at 90, and again, a good way to kind of tell that you got your servo arm 90, because of this alignment pin, we know this arm's 90. We know it's exactly right, but how do we know we're exactly right here? Well, another way to tell would be, you know, if both links are pretty darn close to the same, then, and which mine look exactly, if I hold them up together, they look exactly the same. Okay, again, a turn here, one way or the other, I wouldn't worry about too much. But again, so we put this link on, we go over here to this ball, and we should be able to just drop it right on the ball. Okay, it should center up right with that ball. You don't want it to be too short or too long. It's going to pull your shafts in or out, and that's not good on the bearings. So let me snap that on there. Okay, once again, check your range of movement. Okay, and center up the stick again. Again, where we are at center stick on throttle. And again, double check with your alignment pin, make sure that arm's 90. Okay, so that's basically it on that set, and it came out really good for me. I got nice square boxes. I know my servo arms are 90 because these links are pretty much the same amount of turns. My arm, my elevator arm, and this arm is now 90. So basically, you're going to flip over the heli. You're going to do the very same thing with this servo to this one, and again, you've got the alignment hole you can run your tool through for this bell crank to get 90. So I'm not going to repeat that process again because it's the same, but go ahead and get those links made up. Then, when all said and done, at that point, you can go ahead and put your servo wheel screws in. If you got Metal Gear servos, don't forget the Loctite on those. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of guys losing servo screws. So if it's Metal Gear, use Loctite. Anyway, so there we have it. Let's go ahead and finish that other side, and we'll continue on up to the head setup. Okay, so I just wanted to go over a couple things. So there we are, all set up. We've got our swash plate all moving in correct directions. Okay, pitch up. All three arms come up as you see. I'll pitch all the way down. I'll go down. Let's check our aileron and elevator. I'm going to go right aileron. We want this one to come down. Pull the swash plate this way. This one to come up. Okay, on this radio, aileron was backwards, so I had to change these two numbers here. This one was a positive 100, and that one was a negative 100, and I had to flip those. No big deal. Elevator, you pull back. The front elevator arm should come up. The two back here should go down. That will tip the swash back. So that's when I pull back on the elevator. Okay, So we got all that pretty basic. So I want a couple things. When I did the head build, I talked about sizing links. I'm going to replace all my links. All Outrage guy says don't size them. They wear in pretty quick. I'll work them around on the ball a little bit if they're excessively stiff, and just kind of work them around on the ball, on the actual ball, and that did seem to loosen them up. Okay, another tip they gave me, and let me turn off here, is on the elevator arm, the one on here, this one here, that has the 2 set screws that hold the shaft. Apparently this has been happening to some people, and I'll talk about it. I'm going to take one out. That way I don't lose my position or anything like that in the flat spot. If you remember, these 2 set screws, there's flat spots on that shaft. Now, set screws normally have what is called a dog ear on the end. You can see mine's flattened out a little bit because I tightened it. But the dog ear is like a cup. And the idea is when you tighten up a set screw on a metal rod, that cup digs in and carves a circle in the metal rod. That keeps it from slipping. It's great for pinions. It's great for other things that have that kind of load. But because I guess this rocks back and forth several times, over time, this dog ear can rock and loosen the set screw up on you. So all you want to do is just take that set screw out, take a file, and flatten those dog ears. Make this a nice flat end. Do it to both set screws one at a time. That way you won't lose your position, and don't forget to re-Loctite them. So again, just kind of touching on the ball links and those 2 set screws, which is a tip that came from Outrage.